Hey, everybody, welcome back to Tech Tune Up. I'm your host, Paul Meeks, brought to you by our friends at Benzinga. Thanks for their support. This is a show where we delve into the key tech news of the week and not only try to pin down how they're important to individual companies, but even unveiling some broader trends. So let's get right at it with some of the stock news this week. First of all, I think this is an interesting tell. The Swedish telecom equipment company Ericsson announced that they're firing 1,200 people. Why should you care? Because Ericsson is one of the biggest providers of equipment for the backbone in networks such as T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, and we've also seen a slowdown in business in other US companies that provide those services, particularly companies like Cisco and Juniper Networks. So we're seeing a slowdown in the purchase of telecom equipment. So this is important. Data connectivity is important. However, there is a slowdown in the legacy business and an acceleration in the pace of the spending, of course, in all things AI, artificial intelligence. Next on the docket is we played this trade on Benzinga like a fiddle. Micron Technology, which has long been on my list, and I touted it a week ago. Since then, announced its quarterly earnings. Since then, the stock is up about 30% in 1 week. So obviously the news was very good and the company guided to even more goodies. And here's the interesting thing. Micron is number 3 in the world, number 1 in the States in chips for memory, particularly something called DRAM, dynamic random access memory. And these are going to play a bigger and bigger role in all things AI, particularly with a new iteration called HBM, high bandwidth memory. This is very interesting for Micron. I've been following this company since it went public in the mid 1980s to talk about having orders completely booked for all of this year and essentially all of next year for this HBM chip to support AI infrastructure spending. This is really interesting. And I will tell you this, even though the stock has already gone to the moon since I've recommended it on Benzinga, I'd still buy it today. I think it still might be, even at this price, and it's up again today, still might be my best tech pick. Next, Apple. Apple is a company, on the other hand, I've been poo-pooing for a long time. And I will say that there may be a ray of hope announced this week. There is an analyst on the street from Melius Research named Ben Righteous, who I like very much. I think he's one of the top tech voices. And he claims that Apple is going to have an app store dedicated to AI apps as soon as this summer. And they are in desperate need of a revenue kicker. And they are desperate need to pick up some of the lost ground in AI. So this could be good. In the meantime, they continue to be under a full regulatory assault. Now we have a suit brought by the Department of Justice here in the States, on top of the pushback that they're seeing in the European Union. And this is the rollout of something in the EU called the Digital Markets Act. And I will tell you this, if you violate the Digital Markets Act one time, they can take as a penalty 10% of your global revenues. The fine for Apple would be about $37 billion. So yes, that is a stranglehold. The next is a very interesting, very timely story, particularly since we're in the election season. Today is the debut of ticker symbol DJT. This is Donald Trump's Truth Social, which kind of in an underhanded way went public today through a merger with a SPAC, which is a blank check company. I will tell you this. This is not a company. Last year, Truth Social, through the first 9 months of 2023, had only $3 million in revenue. And this stock today is being valued at about $6 billion or so dollars. Preposterous. You're not going to be able to borrow the stock. from any firm on the street, at least not right away. But if this stock price continues to rise, this might become my best short sale bet. Wherever you feel about the president, yay or nay, this business, 3 million in revenue. This is kind of like the economics of a mom and pop grocery store. This is not a business. This shouldn't be trading in the public markets, and it will become a great short. Next, another stock that I think you should sell or consider shorting when you can is, I've talked about this last week, the social media company that IPO'd last week called Reddit. Reddit is a minor league compared to the major league social media companies like Alphabet and Meta. And if they're going to survive on the digital advertising scraps left over from the big boys, they will not make it. In the meantime, as there is after any IPO, when the investment bankers are hawking their stock, the stock has gone way up. Another business. They'll make it. I don't think DJT is going to make it, but they'll make it. But the stock is egregiously priced. It goes on my short list. Another IPO of note last week is kind of interesting. It's a software or data connectivity company called Astera Labs, ALAB, recent IPO. Now, this one I am more bullish on because it seems that they are directly linked to some success in AI, particularly data center semiconductor connectivity. So let's keep an eye on that one. I haven't done enough work on it to bless it as of yet. One stock I blessed for a long time is a company called Broadcom, brilliantly managed, ticker symbol AVGO. And I think that this is a stock which is kind of a combo semiconductor and software company. Should be in your portfolio. Buy it on a dip. Another stock that we have played on Benzinga like a fiddle, it's been very profitable for you and for me, is the AI customized server company called Supermicro, ticker symbol SMCI. A couple of weeks ago, the stock was trading mid-show at $800 a share. I stopped the show. I said, buy it. A week later, we come back. It's at $1,000 a share. And then I get a little bit worried that they are going to do a stock offering, which they did last week. They sold 2 million shares. And of course, more supply of stock on the market did cause a downdraft. And then it came bouncing right back. So stay tuned here for SMCI. We are playing it so successfully. I'm always worried about regulations for all my tech favorites, particularly here, but also abroad in the European Union specifically. And the Chinese have announced that they're going to prohibit the share of AMD and Intel chips to government entities in China. It's just another string of examples about how things are getting very nasty in the tech arms race between the US and the Chinese. And I actually am a patriot just like you, but I don't like this because, believe it or not, guys, we need each other. This is not a good trend. This is a bad trend. The next company I want to talk about, and we'll finish up this section here, is Synopsys. You may recall, because it's been on my faves list for a long time, this is a software company, EDA, which stands for Electronic Design Automation. And these folks create software that is used by semiconductor engineers to design chips. Now, they have had a brilliant CEO, Silicon Valley legend, named Art DeHoos, and he founded the company in the 80s and ran it until a couple of months ago. So you always worry about when somebody of this magnitude and success retires, what's going to happen? Though I will tell you, I've been watching the company closely, and I'm still bullish on it because their new CEO has actually made, I think, some very positive moves. They've divested some no-growth businesses. They've upped the ante with more investment in either through R&D or through acquisitions of some faster growth businesses, really jumping on the bandwagon for AI. So I think under new leadership, all is well with Synopsys. Now that wraps up the stock tells. Let's get into my faves. Hey guys, We have a couple of changes to the list, but here they are. Let's take a look at our new color coding system. Green means let's buy that today. Yellow means it's still on the list, but I'm getting a little queasy, so I wouldn't add to positions, or I'd be very careful. And if we have a stock that is red, that is sell into strength or short sell it if you have the ability to do that. So in cybersecurity, I continue to like CrowdStrike. I told you the story of Micron. Even after it's up 30% since I recommended a week ago, still on my entire list, my best buy. I'm starting to get a little worried about T-Mobile. Still my favorite play among the wireless carriers, but let's hold off. If you have it, don't sell it, but let's get a little bit cautious. Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, Synopsys, I just spoke about the successful leadership change there. The bellwether of all in AI, NVIDIA, Nice Systems, IAC, Broadcom, I just spoke about, ticker symbol AVGO. Mercado Libre, my Latin American Amazon. Getting a little bit queasy. I'm still sticking with it, but I think you need to be very careful. And then, I've continued to like, because I recommended a couple of weeks ago, Duolingo, ticker symbol DUOL. So next, let's take a look at some other names. These are my pans, right? They are red coated, which means run for the hills. I told you about Reddit. Come on, man. This thing has got to be a great short once all this fluff around their IPO subsides. I told you about DJT. When I was a young analyst in 1995, I worked for a firm in Silicon Valley. Not only did I cover the tech stocks, I've been doing that nonstop my whole career. But at that point in time, I also covered the casinos. And I went to the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in downtown San Francisco for the IPO roadshow of DJT, which is the last time our friend Donald Trump tried to bring his casinos public. Of course, this isn't a casino company. This is a social media company. But take a look at the track record of the last iteration of ticker symbol DJT. 1995 IPO. Stock initially went up. The company was bankrupt by 2004. A year or so later, they come out of bankruptcy and go bankrupt again in 2009. So that company actually had some cash flow. This social media company got nothing. Tesla, I continue to be really worried about. I don't like the EV theme. I tell you to, if you want to do good in your personal life. Do not do good in your investment life. All these EV stocks have sucked. And Tesla is in a steep down spiral. There's an analyst on Wall Street that I really respect. You should follow him. He works for the firm Bernstein. His name is Tony Sacconaghi. And he said today that Tesla goes to 120. I think if Tesla breaks 160 on the downside, he's wrong. It's going all the way to 100. And I've said that for weeks. Rivian is a company also in the EV space, also a company that I don't know if it makes it long-term, that I think you should short into some recent product hype. So those are the tech pans that go along with the tech picks. And now let's get into tech trends. So remember I told you that with tech investing and investing in any aggressive growth stock, because their valuations are so sensitive to the movement in interest rates, that you have to spend about 80% of your time following our central bank, the Federal Reserve Board, which sets rates in this country, and all things to do with that. Only 20% of the time should you spend on actually doing fundamentals of individual tech companies. I know that sounds counterintuitive. I know it sounds weird, but it's the truth. And so what happened with the Fed this week? Well, this is going to be very important. Coming up this Friday, they are going to delve into, because it's going to be released by the Feds, the latest gauge for core PCE. What's that mean? Core means it excludes in the calculation the very volatile food and energy. PCE stands for personal consumption expenditures. There are other inflation gauges that are more popular, including the Consumer Price Index, CPI. But the Fed has told you that when they make decisions about inflation, and they will continue to raise rates as long as they think inflation is a problem. We call that tight monetary policy. And then they will pivot and lower interest rates when they think they have slain the inflation beast. We're going to get a progress check this Friday. Last month, the core PCE year to year was up 2.8%. When they announce on Friday the February number, they're expecting the same 2.8%. Now, the Fed goal is 2%. And I know you don't think that a change from 2.8% to 2.0% is much. I tell you, it is very, very difficult to close that gap. And this is super important because if the Fed doesn't see a path to core PCE at 2% from today's 2.8, they can't lower rates. And if they don't lower rates, we don't have a meaningful support for tech stocks. So keep tuned. I'll be watching this. The number will be released by the Feds at about 8:30 a.m. Eastern time on Friday. I talked about some of the highlights, particularly the battle with Apple, but the EU, as they unveil this Digital Markets Act, also are going after not just Apple, but Amazon and NVIDIA and Meta and TikTok, which is actually a Chinese privately held company. And I actually think that this is a major threat, the biggest threat, because governments here abroad are over-regulating these companies and really turning the screws on them. And this might force some of these very popular companies that have been the best investments in tech to divest businesses, change their very successful business models. It can't be good. Next, I thought it was a very interesting announcement today that the Saudis, who have over time invested in some mature U.S. companies, but this is new. They are going to get in cahoots with some U.S. venture capital firms, and they're actually going to create a very large fund to essentially invest very early in the game, as venture capitalists do, in AI. Interesting collaboration, kind of a new step. Also another slap on the back to the success of AI, I think. I've always worried about cyber attacks. You know, one of my stocks to play this theme, as you know, is CrowdStrike. It's been a very good bet for us on Benzinga. But I will tell you that now we got some weird stuff going on. There are water systems that are being attacked remotely. It's not just that they're stealing your Bitcoin. They're disrupting the water flow. And this is very serious. And this is a whole nother level of very nasty, not just here in the States, but abroad, cyber attacks. Last thing I want to mention with tech trends is in 2022, Biden pushed, the Congress blessed through legislation, the 22 CHIPS Act. CHIP stands for chips, semiconductors. And at that time, the feds set aside over $50 billion to build what we call fabs in semiconductors, fabrication facilities, or where they build semiconductors, bringing that manufacturing, which is predominantly in places like South Korea and Taiwan, back to the States. And so only now, 2 years later, are they starting to dole out that money. And Intel, who's building a big facility near Columbus, Ohio, also building other facilities, just got a pretty nice chunk, $8.5 billion. Micron, the company I talked about earlier in this broadcast, they'll probably get even more. But here's the interesting thing about the CHIPS Act. Yes, we will bring semiconductor manufacturing, or some of it, back to the States. But you know who's going to get the most money? It's the guys that are already dominant. It's going to be Samsung, which is a South Korean company, and Taiwan Semiconductor, which of course is a Taiwanese company. So it's interesting. These foreign companies will be paid to build here, but at the end of the day, they're foreign companies. So those are the things that I'm thinking about, and we will see you next week.